Finding the slope from points. Find the slope of the line that passes through the points -6, 1 and 4, 7. So up to this point, we've been finding slope of a line that's graphed on a coordinate plane. But you don't need a coordinate plane or a graph to find the slope of the line. I've given you 2 points, which is all you need to do. All you need to have to find slope. The formula to find slope that we know is m equals change in y or change in x. Now this formula also can be written as rise over run. This formula is much more helpful if we have a graph. And since we don't have a graph, we're going to have to maybe simplify that formula or expand it a little bit. Change in y over change in x. We talked about how delta means change. Now let's think about what operation in math represents change. And that operation is subtraction. So another way to write slope instead of change in y is to write it like this. y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. The little 2 and the little 1, they're not exponents. That's called subscript. And all that really means is the second y minus the first y all over the second x minus the first x. All of this formula and all this formula is a fancy way of saying subtract the y's to find the difference, to find how much the y's changed, and then subtract the x's to find how much the x's changed, to find the difference in x's. All right. The reason why we put these 2's and these 1's here is to remind us that when we're finding the change, we have to go in the same direction. All right, so let's tackle this problem here. We have y2 minus y1. There's 4 numbers here in this problem, and the 2 that are y values are the 1 and the 7. So it doesn't really matter which one I label as y2 and which one I label as y1. I just need to make sure that I go in the same direction when I go and do the x's too. So I'm going to say this one's 2 and this one's 1. So y2 is 7 minus y1 is 1. Since this one was y2, this one has to be x2. I can't switch this and make this x1. This one has to be the second x because this one was the second y. So I'll make that one x1. So x2 is 4 minus x1 is -6. Be careful of your sign rules here because we're going to simplify and get 7 minus 1 is 6. And 4 minus -6 is really 4 plus 6, which is 10. So our slope of this line that we can't even see is 6/10. Slope should always be written as an integer, which means not a decimal. If it can't be written as an integer, like 2 or -3, you should keep it as a fraction unless the problem, the context of the problem needs it to be a decimal. But you should always reduce it to be a fraction. And it's usually better to keep it in improper form. So this one, that doesn't apply to it. But we can simplify this. 6/10 reduces to 3/5. So the slope of the line that passes through these 2 points is 3/5. That would mean if I were to graph this, my rise would be 3 and my run would be 5. All right, let's do one more. Same setup. Find the slope of the line that passes through the points 2, -8, and -6, -5. So when I tackle these problems, the first thing I do is write the slope formula. And because I don't have a graph, I'm just going to go straight to writing the formula that has x2 and x1 and y2 and y1. And then to use this formula, I'm going to actually label everything here. So I'm going to say this is x1, and this is y1, and this is x2, and this is y2. So then all I do is just take the numbers and put them in the formula in the right spot. y2 is -5 minus y1, which is -8. x2 is -6 minus 2. A lot of negatives here, so be really careful with your signs. -5 minus -8 is really the same as -5 plus 8. And -6 minus 2, we don't need to simplify that one at all. So -5 plus 8 is 3. and negative 6 minus 2 would be negative 8. So this can't be reduced at all, 3 over negative 8, but it can be written a little differently. Maybe when you did this, you assigned things a little differently. You might have got negative 3 over 8. These two fractions are equivalent, and it doesn't actually matter which number is negative, as long as one of them is negative. But when I write these, you're going to see me write it not like this or like this, but instead with the negative just in front of the fraction. And that's fine too. These three are all equivalent. This one just means that the whole fraction is negative, whereas this one you kind of have the negative attached to one of the numbers. That's not a huge deal, but I think it looks better to have the negative out front of the slope. So this one has a slope of negative 3/8, which means the rise would be 3 and the run would be 8. And if I were to graph it, since it's negative, it would go downhill. Thank you for watching.